Normandy, during the D-Day anniversary, is unforgettable, but after several trips, including the 80th anniversary, I learned some hard lessons. It's a long flight from the US, and it's exhausting. We really should have stayed in Paris to rest first. But instead, we met up right away with my brother and sister-in-law at Charles de Gaulle Airport. He had rented a car, but picking it up took longer than we expected, and we still had a 4-hour drive ahead. It might have been scenic if I hadn't slept the whole way. It's probably better to stay overnight in Paris and start fresh the next day. I really emphasize packing clothing that you can layer. It's cold. If it warms up, you can always dress lighter. June, July, August, it didn't matter. I checked the weather every time, and I was still cold. We ended up buying sweatshirts every trip, although they did make good souvenirs. You don't need as much as you think. Pack light. It can be done. I pack one carry-on for 3 weeks. Clothes that mix and match, and that's it. I've done it, and I had everything I needed. And I've also seen people struggling with large suitcases, more than one for one person. And then you notice the opposite. I met a Norwegian backpacking for a month with just a single backpack. And he, like me, had everything he needed, only less. On my first trip to Normandy, it rained all day long. Ever since then, I always bring a packable rain poncho. It folds into its own pocket and clips onto your belt or your bag, wherever you can grab it fast. It's one of those things you'll be glad you have, trust me. And it's always a good idea to bring an umbrella, too. Also, pack for the experience. There are World War II events where people dress in 1940s clothing, like dances. Even locals, cashiers at grocery stores, the hairstyles. You start noticing it everywhere. I even saw a mother and her young son, both dressed up. She in a vintage dress, and him in a World War II uniform. It really changes how it feels. I'm actually wearing 1940s dresses, pantsuits, and culottes in this video. I bought them online for the occasion, and I ended up loving them. I even wear them around my hometown. And yes, bring good walking shoes. Another thing to think about is transportation. I've tried just about every option getting there, and they all come with their pros and cons. One-day tours from Paris are easy. They handle everything, the language, the roads, what to see, even the cafes. It's all taken care of, but it's expensive, and it's rushed. You're limited in how much you can really see. 4 hours there, 4 hours back. By the end of it, you're exhausted. About the trains. We paid for reserved seats, and it didn't matter. A family took them anyway. We tried to explain, but they wouldn't move. It ended up being a waste of money. We had to find other seats, moving our luggage through a narrow aisle in a crowded car. It wasn't easy. Our bags ended up on the table between us. It's a good reason to travel light. And maybe think twice about paying for reserved seats. Buses are usually the cheapest option, and your luggage typically goes underneath, which helps. Trains and buses will both get you to the main towns, so they're solid options. Rental cars, they give you more control, but you don't know the roads, the signs, or the rules. Gas is expensive, parking is limited, then there are road closures. And in my opinion, the overall cost ends up higher than other options. What looks close on a map takes longer than you think. But you do have transportation whenever you need it, and no schedules to follow. You need to think about how you're going to get around Normandy. When I visit Normandy, or other places in Europe, I've used bus tours like Viator, sometimes Trafalgar. They're a little different. Viator is usually shorter, just a few hours, sometimes a day. Trafalgar tends to be longer trips, multi-day, even a few weeks. But both are organized and take care of the details. They pick you up and drop you off at designated locations. The guides know the history, they know the event schedules, times, roads, places, and they have access to good parking. That matters more than you think. On this last trip, we ended up parking in a cow pasture, inside the hedgerows. You had to watch where you stepped, for more than one reason. The ground was uneven. I had a walker, one with good suspension, so I managed. But we still had to walk along the side of the road, which made things more difficult. We crossed ditches, mud, rough terrain, with cars parked in our way and traffic to watch for. Choosing the wrong base town. Normandy may look compact on a map, but once you're there, distance really matters. Choosing where you stay matters more than most people expect. Omaha Beach, Sainte-Mere-Eglise, Pegasus Bridge. They're iconic, they're powerful. But during anniversary week, they're crowded, expensive, and often booked solid far in advance, sometimes up to a year in advance. However, many events happen in those areas, and you could save time and money on transportation. If you stayed in one of those towns, you won't have to worry about parking either. I first booked Ouistreham. It's close to Pegasus Bridge, and there was supposed to be a piper playing there. That didn't happen. I even asked at the information desk. They had no idea what I was talking about. Nothing. And the lodging there, I couldn't extend it, so I kept it anyway and found another place for extended time I needed. At the time, the lodging here was just under €100. Since I couldn't extend my stay in Ouistreham, I had to find somewhere else. And that's how I ended up in Port-en-Bessin. It actually turned out to be the better spot. It was inexpensive, a little over €110 at the time. The place we stayed was a 16th century building, and that alone made the trip even better. And because I had to move anyway, I went ahead and added extra days, since the anniversary events start around June 1st and run through mid-June. There were drone shows over the landing beaches, and I thought Port-en-Bessin was close enough we'd be able to see it. I didn't factor in the actual distance, but the town had its own fireworks, and they were fantastic. So don't book around an event that may or may not happen, and always factor in distance. One thing I didn't do was look deeper into the history of where we were staying. In Ouistreham, it's straightforward. That's Sword Beach. But Port-en-Bessin had a much bigger role than I understood at the time. It was essential to the D-Day operation. The port had to be taken so fuel and supplies could come in. British commandos came in on June 7th, scaling the cliffs, fighting through German defenses to take it. And I was staying right there, without fully understanding what had happened. I missed the chance to explore it the way I should have. Don't rely on the schedule. It can be wrong. We showed up for a parade in sainte-mere-eglise. Everyone thought it was happening that day, saying it would start any minute. It didn't. It actually happened a few days later on the 5th. So if that happens, don't waste an opportunity. We ended up walking around the town exploring. There was a reenactment camp, tanks, motorcycles, the paratrooper museum, even a piper playing in the church square, right below the mannequin of John Steele. There's always something going on there on an anniversary. The town and the church are best known for John Steele, the paratrooper whose parachute got snagged on the church. He hung there, helpless, for hours, until 2 German soldiers cut him down and took him prisoner. Today, there's a mannequin hanging from the church to honor him. We stood there in the square, looking up at it, trying to imagine what that must have been like. After we took in the scene, we went inside the church. It's ancient, built centuries ago. 12th century to be exact. You can feel it the moment you step in. It's quiet, almost still. There are stained glass windows that honor the paratroopers who helped liberate the town. One of them shows the Archangel Saint Michael, the patron saint of paratroopers. And then there's the Airborne Museum in Sainte-Mere-Eglise. They have a C-47 there, one you can actually walk inside. When I stepped in, there were flashing lights, noise, movement, and I kept thinking, this must be the simulator I had read about. My son said no, it couldn't be. My brother said the same, and they were right. It's not the simulator, but it still gives you a feel for what those flights were like. And honestly, I was still impressed. We walked through the rest of the museum, and it's very well done. There are several buildings, each covering a different part of the airborne story. When we were there, 2024, active service members got in free. About parades, find a spot early, and stay there. When it actually starts, you want to experience it. This was June 5th, the day before the anniversary, in Sainte-Mere-Eglise. You get right up on the roadside as close as you can. Get there early, even if it looks empty, and then stay put. Because once people realize where the parade is, it fills up fast. Don't move, you will lose your spot. And those spots are coveted. This part made the whole trip worth it. When the parade came through, the veterans came with it. Almost all of them were in wheelchairs. All but one. They were in their late 90s, some over 100. They were pushed through the streets by present-day soldiers. And the crowd, the French, and people from everywhere, they weren't just watching. They went wild, clapping, cheering, hollering, jumping up and down, saying sincere thank yous, over and over, reaching out, shaking their hands, and you could see it in the veterans' faces. It meant something to them. They looked happy, moved, like they truly felt it. Shaking their hand was the highlight of the trip. Earlier that day, while we were waiting, parachutists were dropping into Sainte-Mere-Eglise Church Square. There were flyovers, too, by World War II-era planes. All part of the events the day before June 6th. And that night, there was a concert. Actors from Band of Brothers, who are also musicians, but it didn't start until 9:30 that night. And by then, it had already been a long day. So, we didn't go. Talk to people. They might know about events you wouldn't hear about otherwise. Earlier in the week, there was supposed to be a reenactment of the landings at Utah Beach. It was set to start at 6:30 in the morning, the same time as the original landings. And while we were in Port-en-Bessin, there was a landing craft out in the canal, men getting on and off, others already on it, trying to steady it. I don't know if it was connected to that reenactment, but during that week, everything feels connected. Something is always happening, somewhere nearby. We talked about going. It would have meant getting up around 2 a.m., or just sleeping in the van. We were actually going to do it, until we heard it was restricted. Road closures, not open to the public. So, we didn't go. The next day, we talked to a reenactor. He said, we could have gone, if we had taken the back roads. This reenactor was French, playing an American medic. There were other nationalities too, playing Americans. We came across these World War II-era motorcycles, just sitting off the side of the road. They were in a hedgerow pasture, so we pulled over. My father had a 1918 Indian motorcycle with a sidecar back in the 1930s, so seeing those there, that caught my attention. It was interesting to see. I had read there were rides in sidecars around the area, but we just didn't have the time. You'll want to get to the popular spots early. We went to Dead Man's Corner and the D-Day experience. That morning, we were supposed to be there early, around 9. But my brother got delayed. There had been a parade across Pegasus Bridge, and it held him up. But he made the most of it, filming it, and just taking it in. I wish I'd been with him. He was coming from Cabourg, about the closest place he could book. And everything just took longer than we expected. Another time, we stopped at the monument to Major Dick Winters. And while we were there, these Willys Jeeps just pulled in. One of the men told us he had rebuilt his Jeep, piece by piece, using authentic, period parts. That really stood out. If you go to the D-Day experience, get there when it opens, plan to stay all day. It's worth it. I had read about the simulator, the C-47 there, in a brochure. It puts you inside what the paratroopers experienced, or as close as you can get. The flak, the flashing lights, the noise. They even warn you, if you have a heart condition, don't go in. I really wanted to do it, but I didn't know you needed reservations. By the time we got there, the only opening left was 6 p.m. Too late. We still had a 2-hour drive back, so I passed on it. That one, I wish I had known. The movie there is basic information on D-Day, so if you know your history, you can skip it. I didn't actually go into the Dead Man's Corner Museum, but my sister-in-law did. I was just too tired. She said it was really good. They had people there, dressed in 1940s uniforms and clothing, answering questions, and adding to the experience. You should consider exploring the other history in the area. Normandy isn't just D-Day. There are layers of history all around you that are easy to miss if you don't look for them. My brother here is examining the gun, or more likely, pretending. Just outside the D-Day beaches is Bayeux. It's a small, walkable town, known for its medieval cathedral, the Bayeux Tapestry, and its deep history. The cathedral is impressive even from the outside, and the town itself was left largely untouched by the war. It was bypassed. There was a small German garrison here, but they left early on. It was actually the first major town liberated after D-Day, taken by British forces moving inland from Gold Beach. So much of what you see there is still original. You'll also notice the roundabouts. Many are decorated with displays that change throughout the year, which adds a unique local touch. When Allied forces moved through the area, the narrow streets weren't built for tanks. So Patton's engineers built a bypass, a road that curved around the town instead. It allowed armor to keep moving without getting trapped in the streets. It's an easy stop and worth taking a little time to explore. The town is accessible by bus and train. Then there's Mont-Saint-Michel. Technically it's an island, but honestly, I wouldn't call it much of one. It feels more like a rock rising out of the bay. The legend goes back to 708 AD, when Saint Michael was said to have told a bishop to build a church there. And then there are the steps. Endless steps. At one point, my brother asked me if I was going to make it. I wasn't disabled then, but I was starting to question it. During World War II, the Germans occupied Mont-Saint-Michel. Most of their troops were nearby, not stationed inside the abbey itself. And somehow, this place was spared. So much of what you see is still original. The whole area is surrounded by shifting sands. At high tide, the water can rise dramatically, almost 50 feet. And yes, there is quicksand. You can get there by train and bus, so it's an easy addition to a Normandy trip. On one trip, I stayed right on Mont-Saint-Michel, just not inside the abbey. You can't do that. But it's incredible, knowing people have been sleeping and dining there since the time of pilgrims and knights. The food is good, especially the lamb, which gets its flavor from sheep grazing on salt-rich grass, flooded by seawater. Seafood is also a great choice, and the crepes are different from what you'd find in the States. They're made with buckwheat. My son was looking forward to crepes on this trip. He was sorely disappointed. Arromanches played a key role in the Normandy landings. This is where the Allies built the artificial harbor, the Mulberry Port, part of Operation Mulberry. When I stayed there, the hotel was reasonable at the time, 2018. The room was clean, and under €100, and we were just steps from the water. The hotel had a restaurant, but I didn't get a chance to eat there. Today, you can still see the remains of the artificial harbor out in the water, but you can't explore them up close, or go inside, for safety reasons. There's also the Musée du Débarquement right in town, and just a short walk up the hill, the Arromanches 360 Circular Cinema, showing a 360-degree film of the landings. I've been to Pointe du Hoc 4 times, and every time a different guide told different stories. Standing here, looking off this cliff, it makes you wonder how any of the rangers made it, straight up those cliffs, under fire. Their objective, a set of guns, that the Germans had already moved. Standing inside one of the bunkers, right on the edge of the cliff, you can look out and imagine what the Germans saw. Nothing but the horizon, filled with ships, endless. From inside, you start to notice the details. A corner, where a telephone might have been. The walls, closing in. The air, heavy. You can feel it, the claustrophobia starting to rise, and with it, the realization of what was coming. Omaha Beach stretches out wide and quiet, more open than you might expect. Even when we were there were only a handful of people along the sand. No crowds, just the water, and the space to take it in. For a place with so much history, It's surprisingly still. If you're visiting around June 6th, parts of Omaha Beach and the American Cemetery may be closed for ceremonies with dignitaries and heads of state. Plan to go a few days before or after and spend that day somewhere else. We did. Explored Weestrom, the restaurants, the town, walking the beach. Each town has placards, one for each hero, and there are quite a few. That will keep you busy for a while. On Utah Beach, there's a restaurant. We ate there on my first trip. The food was good, and it was busy. But what stood out to me wasn't the food. It was what was underneath. There's a preserved bunker space, originally used by the Germans and later used by American forces for communications. There are radios there too. And the walls are covered with names, dates, hometowns, and of course, Kilroy was here, written by the men who were there. You can stand in that room and see their handwriting. It stays with you. Don't assume, just because it's France, every meal is going to be amazing. You'll be disappointed. Normandy's known for ham, cheese, and butter. They throw it on a roll, and honestly, it's not bad. You can get it pretty much everywhere, and you can get tired of it pretty fast. Every town has a bakery, a grocery store, cafes, restaurants. We usually just walked to a bakery and grabbed breakfast. It's cheap, it's good, no surprises. Same with the grocery store. Although, some things taste a little different than they do in the States, like Coke. We went to a local restaurant by the sea in Weestrom. They had what I thought was a hamburger. My son warned me. I didn't listen. It turned out it was steak tartare. The waiter asked how I wanted it cooked, so I said, "Well done." And because he asked, I thought I was safe. No, I wasn't. The outside was cooked, but the inside, completely raw. So yeah, make sure you know what you're ordering. I tried this once. Yeah, it wasn't good. It actually made me sick. They'll sometimes mix coffee with Calvados, Normandy's apple brandy. Kind of like their version of Irish coffee. But instead of that smooth whiskey, it's got a sharper, more fermented bite. And it hits a lot harder than you expect. I don't recommend it. The best meals we had was in Paris, at the Sheraton Airport Hotel, and this Paris Thai restaurant. Before we left Normandy, we visited the American Cemetery overlooking Omaha Beach. A lot of people don't realize there's a path to an overlook, where you can stand and take it all in. There's also a daily flag-lowering ceremony, and if you catch it, it's a moving moment. We didn't. I only read about it later. Rows and rows of white crosses and stars of David, all perfectly aligned facing west, toward home, which was intentional, all carefully maintained, for the 9,000 souls buried here. It's a quiet place, with a reflecting pool and a small chapel. Behind the memorial are the names of the missing, those who were never found. The cemetery is deeply emotional, so plan to take your time. The Normandy American Cemetery Visitor Center provides helpful context, and you can look up specific names before you go. If you want a quieter experience, come early in the morning or later in the afternoon. As you walk through the American Cemetery, you might feel a heavy tug at your heart. I did all 4 times I visited. It's real. Others have felt it. I came here thinking I would see history. The beaches, the bunkers, the places you read about. And I did. But what stayed with me wasn't just what happened here. It was how close it still feels. A quiet beach, a small room beneath a restaurant, a church in the middle of a town. Places that look ordinary until you realize what they were. You can read about Normandy, but standing here is something you don't forget.